Yo, ladies and gentlemen, Strom back with another 3 levels video. This one is going to be 3 levels of concrete. That's right, we are finally going to focus on getting the best block in the game. This is not a meme at all. Totally serious. Completely 100% super duper serious. Everything you could ever need for your building and decoration needs is right here in this block, the yellow concrete. In all seriousness, for a second though, I do build with a lot of yellow concrete. And the main reason being, it's a really good contrast block for the types of building that I do, because I'm not doing deco building. I'm building, machines and farms and stuff like that. So things like redstone dust stick out really well on it. It's a nice high contrast block to be able to see those things. But you'll also see lately I have been working on trying to improve building different circuits with different colors of concrete for you, so it's easier to identify which circuits are where. And while this may not be the best use of a decorative block, I'm sure there are actual uses for it. So in this video, we're going to look at concrete factories. There's going to be 3 levels, as stated in the video, obviously, but we're going to be looking at 2 that are concrete converters and then 1 that is going to be a concrete farm. 2 things real quick before we get into it. First thing is, this world download down in the video description will be a 1.18.2 world download. This will still all work in 1.19, but I know not everyone has updated yet. And I started developing this in 1.18.2, so I just decided to keep it a 1.18.2 download. There aren't really that many mechanic changes or anything to worry about. So if you have 1.19, you can just download this and then open it in 1.19. It's going to let you know that this was from a previous version. You can just open it and everything will be fine. Second thing is, on this sign here, this middle one, we have the 17K an hour. You're going to see a couple of shots that say 10K an hour. But rather than, just going back and fixing my typo there, I decided to just leave the recordings I already did because I noticed it while I was editing. So I hope you'll forgive me for that. But before we get into the farms, let's, as always, talk mechanics. For those of you that already didn't know, in order to get concrete, you need to get yourself 4 pieces of sand and 4 pieces of gravel, and then some kind of color of dye, any of the 16 colors. That's going to give you 8 of the powders. You can build with the powder, however, it is a gravity block, so if it's placed without anything underneath it, it's just going to fall. In order for concrete powder to be turned into concrete, it needs to actually touch some kind of water. So we can see there as it was falling, it touched the water, and then it turned into a block. And then you can either mine it or blow it up with TNT. So obviously the dirtiest way to be able to do this is to just find yourself an area with water like a river or an ocean, stand on the edge and put down the concrete in your offhand and then mine it with your main hand. But we have a couple of main problems. One being the concrete kind of flies everywhere when you do that, because as you place down the next block, sometimes it's glitching out and it's popping off to the side. And the other problem being, if you don't have some sort of hand restock mod like Tweakaroo, then you've still got to switch out, each individual stack in your inventory every time you go through it. And no one has time for that garbage. So we are going to look at 3 different levels of concrete conversion and farming, like I said. So level 1 and level 2 are going to be converters, and level 3 will be our farm. Now, normally in the 3 level series, we go for, level 1 is quick and dirty, level 2 is upgraded as much as possible without glitches, and then level 3 is the approaching OP. But you'll notice we don't see a big spike in there, and in fact, 31.2K an hour. There are designs out there that if you look on YouTube will do, about 100 to 200K more than that. This was not about what is the fastest possible concrete design factory. This was about my 3 levels. So we'll review it a little bit more when we get to level 3, but that concrete factory is going to be my design. And when we get there, we will go over the very small change that is needed to bump this up to 36K an hour. But once again, that doesn't use all my design. But at the end of the day, even if you're not using my designs in your world, if you're at least watching them and learning something, or just watching them and being entertained, that's the goal of this series. So that being said, I don't think there's really much more to get into with mechanics until we get to level 3. So let's just start getting straight into them. So level 1 is going to be quick and dirty, 9.7K converted an hour. This is a very cheap and dirty setup that is still AFKable for your concrete conversion. What we have here is, once again, 0 nether materials, so you don't have to go to the nether to do this at all. All you need is some kind of pick in order to be able to run it. So to use this, you're going to put in your concrete powder up in this chest. That's going to fill up this dropper. We're going to walk up and look at this block, and then I'm going to place this powder in my offhand and have my pick in my main hand and press and hold my left and right mouse buttons. Then if I don't have an auto clicker script like Tweakaroo or something like that, you can press F3 and T on your keyboard. While that loading screen is up, let go of your mouse buttons, and now your player would just hold down those buttons for you. What we have going on is we have a power signal going into this block, so as soon as you put down a concrete block, it then powers this redstone, which then shoots out of the dropper. And then we have this hopper minecart that is pushed up against this wall so that it's on top of both of these hoppers so that we can also take that in at hopper speed. If you're not doing that much conversion, that's fine. You can just, put the hopper minecart over one and, the hopper minecart will be able to have a bit of a buffer in it. However, you don't want to just put a normal hopper under there because then you can have the same thing happen where the block breaks past the hopper cooldown speed because hoppers have more of a cooldown than hopper minecarts, and then you've got some blocks flying out to the side. We want to just collect all our blocks and not lose anything, especially if we're going to AFK it. Then all we've done with this water is we put it up at this level, and then we have a block one level lower so that the water can flow that way. And then because we have this rail here, the game sees this as the lowest block to flow to, and so it flows the water that way. There's another popular method out there that uses an observer that's just pointed in a dropper. And while this works, so you can see I am actually converting concrete, but because the way that the observer is actually sometimes double triggering there, you're seeing I'm actually getting extra concrete powder. And then I eventually have to run out and stop and reset and put it back in and then grab a stack and then bleh. So we can see here, if you look down on my bottom left there in my hand, I just keep a nice even stack of 64 in my hand. So you don't need to start with a full stack of 64. I've just added that. So one issue is if you are on a server and the server is reaching some slight lag, you may hit a little bit of desync where you actually have that redstone not be able to actually fire because of how fast you place down the block. So that's why I just say start out with a stack in your hand, and that way, by the time you're done, you may get down to, like 50 in your hand or maybe 40 if you're on a little bit more laggy of a server. But that's just kind of a buffer to help out the lag. But you can see here in single player, it's keeping up no problem. And then all my concrete is just cleanly in the chest. It's not flown out anywhere. It's not floating in any water, anything like that. I will admit that is the pickiest I have ever been on a level 1 design. Like this works. It works. But level 1 rules are no nether materials, and that takes one piece of quartz. So that breaks the rules. Okay, so we're done with pickaxes now. Forget that. Forget having to mend them and worry about durability and all that crap. Now we're going to bump up that conversion rate with level 2. And this is going to use a few different things. So this is our level 2 converter. Once again, this is still not a farm. This is technically a converter, so you still have to make your concrete powder ahead of time. But what we're using now is a smart piston to push our powder next to our water and convert it. So I'm going to put down powder in my hand here, but it's going to turn instantly to concrete. And that's because of this 0-tick smart piston. Then we push over the whole line twice, and then blow it up and send it over to storage. Before we get into the details of this, let's talk about 0-tick smart pistons. So for those of you that don't know what a smart piston is, a basic smart piston is just a piston that when a block gets placed in front of it, that block gets powered, which then sends signal to the piston to push the block away. A 0-tick piston does that much quicker. It does it in the same tick that you place the block. So we can see this one, reasonably fast, but this one, much faster. I'm going to go ahead and freeze the game, as you can see in the bottom left there. I'm going to place the blocks in front at the same time. So right now the game is paused. And then I'm going to just step forward 1 tick. So this is going to move us forward 1/20th of a second in game time. We can see that this regular smart piston here is still pushing out its block. But this 0-tick piston is already done. So we only step forward 1 tick. So that went forward instantly. And now all we need to do is wait for this piston head to retract. And we can put another block down. So I'm going to step forward 1 more tick. It's retracting. 1 more tick. It's retracting. Now we can see this piston head is retracted. This one is still sticking out. So I can already place another block here. Although technically a player can only do every 4 game ticks. So I'm going to go forward 1 more game tick and place a block there. And we can't place one here yet because that piston head is there. I step forward and this one is ready to go. Another tick. Now this one can have another block placed in front of it. 1 more tick for player speed, and this one can. So we can see there how this can spit out blocks faster. What I've done now is I've enabled the subtick mod by Punchster. So this is a mod that allows you to step through the individual block events inside of a tick. And I'll put a link to that down in the video description if you want to check that out. But basically I'm going to show you here. So we have the game still frozen. I'm going to put down my 2 blocks and then I'm going to step through the individual block events. So the first block event is this piston gets updated. Then this piston, the signal is going through here, up through here, powering this block, which then powers this piston. That updates this piston to realize it's QC'd, and it gets ready to start pushing the block. That means this block is no longer a solid block to transmit the signal. And so we see the signal turns off. That piston now extends. That piston now extends. And we can see here we're still waiting on this one. So why don't we have the same thing on this side and just put pistons up here and power the pistons and QC the sticky pistons? And what is this for? Because you can actually use that 3 game ticks to chain these together. So why don't we just make a wall of smart pistons, right? Well, here's the problem. So we get ready to push the last one into the smart piston that's going to set it off. And we figure, okay, we're going to have a whole wall of blocks pushed out. And then what the heck, it only pushed out 1. This is because of the block event delay. I'm not going to go into too much detail about exactly how that's operating for 2 reasons. One, go check out Myron's channel. He has a couple of videos that walks through what block event delay is and how to control it. So that's one reason. And the second one being, I'm still learning this. But we can use the subtick mod to step through and see exactly what's going on. So I'm going to place a block here. We know that each of these smart pistons is going to take exactly 3 game ticks to be able to reset. So I'm going to step through there, and now we have a block that's here. I'm just going to knock that one out so we can see. We have a block that's here now powering this. We can see that there's redstone signal going to all of these, so that should work, right? Well, let's step through the block events. Why is that one getting updated first? Why did it switch to that one? Why is it now going down the line this way? This is because of the unfortunate randomness of redstone dust update order. So you would think that it would either go from, lowest signal to highest signal or highest signal to lowest signal or in a direction. I built this same exact smart piston wall in about 20 different configurations, and each time it turns out to be random. I talked to some of the guys from the SciCraft team, and they all confirmed the same thing. Redstone dust update order is just unpredictable. So we saw that each one of these pistons up top got its update. But now let's go through the next step. This is the first one to get updated. And so it starts pushing out this block and changes it to block 36. And we can see now the redstone dust line is actually off. So when it starts stepping through these other pistons that are behind here, let me just punch that out so we can see. Those are no longer QC'd. So even though this is going to update them, these are going to read that they're not powered. So we got that. Those ones start extending because they updated while there was still redstone signal. And then that one updates, but then it's done. So we're just going to clean this up real quick. Should probably do it. Yeah, that's better. Now, if we had been doing something up here where we were sending in our own stable signal at the beginning, there are things that we can do to control that. However, we're just going based off of a 0-tick signal to begin with. I wanted this whole thing to just be based on the idea of it just sits there until the player comes along and starts placing blocks, and then it turns on for us. So then it's our good friend, the Glotzerify, to the rescue. And what he came up with for us here is a nice alternative. So technically, these aren't smart pistons, but they kind of are. It's not. What we have here is we have a bud detector that detects block updates. So when a block gets pushed in here, that's going to update this piston, which is going to realize that it's powered by that redstone block and push out. And then we have this piston over here to push it back. So if we didn't have this piston here, and I put a block there, we can see that that then spits out. I'm going to go ahead and move that back. And so now each time that we place a block next to it, it's going to update this. And we're using that to then control this signal over here. And that's being used to cut off this signal right here. So right now this redstone dust line is going like this. Once we move that, that's actually going to reopen that back up, and that can travel over here. And this is the 0-tick generator that Glotz used. And this is doing a much more controlled system where we're not worried about the pistons above it updating. We're now getting a solid signal that's coming in that's going to push all these out. So that's why this is working, and that's a hole in the ground. Now we have the same thing. We're just taking our input signal. So on that smart piston there, whenever that goes off, we're going to drop some concrete powder at the player. So let me just put some powder in there. We do have this row of chests being double hoppered so that it's double hopper speed. So this is going to run at 17K an hour. So we do have to make sure that everything is ready for double hopper speed. We can see when I place one down, I'm going to get one spit out. So as a survival player, you just put a couple of pieces of powder in your inventory and start placing. And we can see there that the dropper is keeping up with me. Everything is coming down this waterway, and then we have 2 times hopper speed item filters here. So that's why we have 2 hoppers on each chest, so we can keep up with that. And because we're blowing up larger batches, we do have an extra one off to the side, so that's why this is 2 wide, just to make sure that we're not burning up any extra that makes it past the batch size. Now, normally in level 2, we do have the rule of it's going to be glitchless play for those people that like to play glitchless. So usually things like TNT duping are not allowed here. In this model, I'm going to use TNT duping. In just a moment, I'm going to go over something that doesn't use duping. And I have also heard your comments down below. For those of you that didn't want to use TNT duping, I promised you that we would have a version that is more TNT efficient. And I have not made that. But luckily, Ilmango has, and he said I could show it off in the video here. It's not cheating. We're going to call this 2.5. So this is Ilmango's TNT blast chamber. This is really efficient on the TNT, so you can put a TNT duper up here, but what we have is we just have a TNT dispenser. This is really efficient because then it packs everything around this area inside that blast radius of the TNT. So when it does use a single piece of TNT, that single piece of TNT is going to now drop down and blow up 240 blocks at once. This is all I did, is I just added the converter right onto the front of it. And we just need to add our dropper and our double speed hopper chest line, power that dropper, and we're good to go. So I am going to leave this in the world download, but I definitely recommend you go to Ilmango's channel. I will put a video link down the video description here where you can see what he does with the blast chamber and how he does it. There are versions that you can also do with the TNT duper, like I said. But this is a great solution for any of those times that you see a farm from me or anyone else that you have TNT duping and you want to play glitchless without duping. This is extremely TNT efficient. So this can take in blocks, as we can see, coming off of that 0 tick. So a block every 4 game ticks. So any of your farms, all you need to do is just turn your items into an item stream, send them in here, and then boom, you've got really efficient TNT blasting. So big thanks to Mango for letting me include his design in here. I had started working on a more efficient blast chamber for this setup over here, but then I decided to go with the slimeless, fanless TNT duper and include this as well because Mango's design is already efficient. So I was just reinventing the wheel. It was kind of pointless. If you didn't like the TNT duping of this version over there, you're probably not going to like this one because what we're going to do is we're actually going to take falling concrete powder blocks and make copies of them, throw them in a machine, and blow them up for free. So this is my falling block duper. This was formerly an end portal. And what we're going to do is we're going to launch these powder blocks towards the portal, but make sure that they land in such a way that the game actually has an entity touching the portal, but a block landing on a block right next to the portal. Then what's going to happen is there's going to be a block left in the overworld. There's going to be an entity that's going to go into the end. This is the part where if you're not familiar with, this is the design that you can replace with the other popular design out there. That's the 36K an hour. And I'll show you later where you make the changes on the end factory in order to just be able to use that same one. Before we get started on that, you're going to need to know how to get rid of the end portal frame. What you're going to need is a fresh stronghold, your eyes to light the portal, a piece of dirt, a red mushroom, and some bone meal. First, you're going to light the portal. Then on each side, you're going to come out 2 blocks. So starting at this block right here, 1, 2, break that out, place down your dirt, place down your mushroom, and grow it. What that's going to do is going to grow the mushroom block into those portal frames and break those away. So when we break our mushroom, that corner is now gone. And then we just need to do the same on the other sides. 1, 2. And then we got to break the stairs away a bit. But same thing, 1, 2. Now we can see we've got red mushroom blocks taking all that up. Now, if you do find one of these rooms that for some reason, doesn't have its ceiling, like a cave went through it or something like that, your red mushroom blocks may grow a little too high. So just bring a little bit of extra bone meal, but you'll get red mushroom blocks back by, red mushrooms back by just breaking away these red mushroom blocks. And now you'll be left with a floating end portal with no edges on it. Make sure you don't place that mushroom too close, because then when you grow it up, you are actually going to take away portal blocks. And now instead of being able to do 12 at a time, we'd only be able to do 10 at a time. And we'd have to redesign the machine for that. So just make sure you're counting that out. 2 blocks away, right? We don't want to try and use the top to break those out. We're just going to go ahead and use the sides because that's much safer. So once we got all that built out, it's time to build this machine. Before we get started, I do have a slightly subtle note that I've left. And, maybe I should have been a little less subtle about it. And posted it just, maybe just a couple more times. Do not leave this running without a player in the end. If you are on a single player, you will crash your game. If you are on a server, you will crash the server. So you can get away with this running for a couple of minutes without worrying about that and just getting a minor lag spike. But you really want to get this running and then get into the end within, let's say like 30 seconds to make sure that you don't have any of that. And here's why. Each time this runs, this is going to send in these 12 powdered concrete blocks as entities into the end. And without a player in the end loading that main end island, they're just going to stay there and keep building up. And since this makes 31k per hour, that means if you leave it running for an hour, you're going to have 31,000 entities in the end. Your game will crash before you reach that point. So if you're doing this on a server, I would recommend just having a player already in the end before you start it up. Either a player or a bot, same thing, doesn't matter. But if you're playing this on single player, definitely set your spawn point real close. So that when you go to the end and let this run for a while and then come back from the end, you're ready to run over and turn it off quick. I have now done my warning. I've told you what you need to remember. I myself have never, ever, ever, ever forgotten to do that. Just kidding, I have. It was on my server, and I had to fix the problem. And what happens is you actually have to go in and delete the entities area for that region in the end. And so if you have a build there that has a lot of extra entities in it, like item frames, things in item frames, you have any mobs or villagers that you have there, they're now gone. Another thing to note, if you are playing on a paper server, you cannot do this. This will not work on paper without additional mods to handle that. So there are mods that add this functionality back to paper, but if you're on a default paper server, you cannot do this because paper will not allow it. I don't know why. The community's been asking for it and the devs are absolutely refusing to do it. I'm not going to get into the politics of paper right now. I'm just going to say if you're on paper, look into using fabric with carpet and lithium and starlight. In my experience, you're going to get better performance anyways. But enough yammering on, let's go ahead and turn this on. So you can see up in the top of my screen there, I've already spawned a bot in the end, so that's safe to run. And in order to turn this on, all I need to do is right-click this note block. That's going to do 2 things. One, it's going to start up our duper, so our falling concrete blocks are getting pushed towards that portal, but they're also getting caught. And that's also going to start up this chunk loader here. So that's another thing to note, is you also need to have the overworld side loaded. Again, if you're on a fabric server with carpet, you can do that with a bot. Otherwise, you can do this with just your simple nether portal chunk loader. Another player would also suffice, but if you don't do that, all that's going to happen is you're going to go to the end, you're going to sit there and wait for your blocks to start coming, and they're just not going to come because this part of the overworld is not loaded. Now, I did say we would get to, and I'm going to go ahead and turn down the volume here. There we go. We know what's going on. I did say I would explain why I decided to use this system instead of actually using the other one. Like I said, 1 was because I wanted to design my own. 2 was because if it is attributed to the person I think it is, I didn't want to use their design. And 3 was there were a couple of things that I also wanted to have that the other design didn't. So you can see here I have nice easy access underneath my nether portal. And then I've also added on some levers here. So a lot of times when you're running these concrete, suddenly you realize, oh, shoot, we don't need any more yellow and black because Strom was running that for 17 hours the other day. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop this one slice of this lever. It's going to stay there. And I can just break away these blocks then. I can place down the new color I want to switch to and turn it back on. And we have set up in the end to be able to handle that. So if you're only sending one, and then you still have access to your nether portal from up top, yes, but then you can also just come underneath and jump through it. I have also included the obsidian platform regeneration here. So this is going to then also send a piece of cobblestone through to the end to land on the end platform to be able to regenerate that so that we can then also mine that for obsidian farm, and we'll get to that as well. This is just using, once again, the Slimeless TNT Duper by Iceberg Lettuce and then Ilmango's mini cobble farm. But again, before we jump over to the end and actually see the concrete factory itself, let's go ahead and slow the game down. So the game is now at 10% of its normal speed. We're at TPS of 2. We can see what's happening. If those blocks get pulled back, then they get pulled up by the honey. As they start dropping, they then get pushed out at the same time that that slime gets pushed out. So that little blink we saw there, that was the moment at which they were changing back into blocks after they had been teleported to the end as entities. And this will work with any color of concrete powder, and you can also do sand and gravel with this as well. So enough of the overworld side. Once again, we're making sure that we have our chunk loader running, and we have our player in the end already. So let's go check out the actual concrete factory in the end. So starting out right off the bat, the default state of this is just going to be taking in the powder. So if you just want to dupe the powder, or again, you're duping sand or gravel, those blocks are going to fly in with that same momentum they took. They're going to be batched up into a group of 3. So it looks like there's only one color, but that's why you see additional colors popping out when it breaks. Then they're falling onto carpet, which is on top of a hopper. And then we have droppers just shooting those back out into a water stream so they can be taken to the collection system, where they can then flow in and be sorted. But that's so boring. We want free concrete. Free yellow concrete. That's where the rest of this comes into play. So we can see here our indicator lamp is on the gravity mode. I want to get this indicator lamp over the concrete mode. So all I need to do is right click this note block. And then we're going to see that the concrete powder is actually going to start flowing further through that hole because these glowstone have been pulled up. The entities get pushed around with slime blocks. They get grouped first into a batch of 6. And then they get pushed up in the air through water where they turn into the blocks. And then we have a piston push system that pushes them up and over the blast chamber, down into the blast chamber, where once again we have the fanless TNT duper. Thank you so much for this, Iceberg Lettuce. That drops TNT to just the right height to blow those up and take those away off to the collection and off to storage. So we said earlier there is some randomness on TNT, and that's why instead of pushing these in from the side, we're actually pushing them up and over and then back down so that we can have these obsidian walls here. Sometimes that concrete will break away enough that if we sent it in from the side, we'd actually get, a little space right here that could then blow up one of our observers. And we don't want to deal with that. We just want to be able to run this continuously. As for the TNT, we don't exactly have a T flip-flop because we wanted to make sure that we weren't sending in too much TNT. So by default, this is going to go every third. But instead of just doing a straight counter, once again, I wanted to be able to be sure that if you decided to hot swap some blocks, that each one of these block streams would be able to activate the TNT. So that's why we see these 4 different sets of observers that can set off the chain. And so this actually gets spammed with a bunch of incoming signal. So by adding this monostable circuit right here on this comparator pulse extender, we can ensure that we're only getting a certain amount of TNT coming through on a schedule. The beacon here is not required unless you want to also be able to run obsidian mode. So you can also build this without the obsidian mode. You can skip the cobblestone generator in the overworld portion, and then you can skip the beacon here. But if you do want to use obsidian mode, just go ahead and turn this on. That's going to feed the player some efficiency on breaking picks. Of course, you're going to have to make sure that you load those up beforehand into this barrel. Hop down in this hole, just look at the obsidian straight on. I'm going to go into survival for this, and we're just going to hold our attack. And each time one of those entities comes through, we can see it's regenerating the end platform. So I'm also getting obsidian with it. The reason that we still have the cobblestone coming in is because we also want to be able to run this for just obsidian mode. And you can, of course, use a bot for this as well. We just want to make sure that that bot is pushed up with his belly up against the actual obsidian there. So we don't want him in the back here. If we're running it without the actual gravity blocks coming through and we're just using the cobble, otherwise he won't be able to reach that end one there. But since we're just mainly going to be running this, it doesn't really matter. But then I'm just going to do player, obsidian, attack, continuous. And now he's just going to mine out our obsidian for us. I'm going to shut his little door so he can be nice and peaceful in there. and go about my day. This beacon here on regen is going to make sure he doesn't starve to death, and then we can run this indefinitely. And then we just have this etho hopper clock here that is going to every so often give us the pickaxe that we need out of this system, just to make sure that he's got that. So we're not running it too often. We do want to make sure that we fill up that bot or that player's inventory, because what we're doing is we're using this hopper clock to every so often shoot another pickaxe at the player or the bot that's standing there, and we don't want them to just suck up all the pickaxes that are being shot out. But the pickaxe will be shot out into this cobweb and give it a little bit of time for the bot to be able to pick it up if his pickaxe is broken. And so this will run for as many pickaxes as you have in here. We also have these levers here, so let's say that you wanted to run some sand at the same time that you're running yellow and black concrete. You can just drop one of these down, and it will then catch these as the powdered version or the gravity version and send the rest off to the concrete. So I'm just going to turn on these three here. So this black, yellow, and green line is the only one that we're turning into concrete. And we can see now this is the only line that's getting pushed in, but because we have this multiple activation on here, we're still having it blow up. Now, I did say, and I will try and remember to put a timestamp in the video description. If you don't see a timestamp here, by all means, let me know down in the comments. But I did say I was going to show how you can change this design to be used for that 36K an hour model. Everything here with the timings will still absolutely function, but the one thing you need to change is the gravity blocks that are coming through, the entities. They're actually going to have a little bit more upwards trajectory, so they would actually end up hitting this. So now I've switched this over to Glotz's overworld portion of a concrete factory. I'm not going to show that because, again, that's on his Patreon, so you can go check that out if you want to see that. There are other designs that do this same rate of this 36K an hour, but we can now see that those kind of blocks are shooting up a little bit more, and they're now hitting this. So even though we're in concrete mode, those are all going straight down to the powdered form. All we need to do is just take out these glowstone that are on the sticky pistons, and then that will also work. So we can see all the colors that we put in our 36K duper are coming through and they're getting blown up just fine. And then if we want to actually just use powdered form, it still works the same. So we just hit that note block and then it's going to push down that sticky piston head, block those off and let those go into powdered form, or again, sand or gravel. Yeah, real easy change. All you need to do is just take out those glowstone blocks that are on that sticky piston. And then the final thing to note is, once again, we do have 4 of each item type filter here because we are running at up to 4 times hopper speed. So with either the 31K or the 36K, you're going to want to make sure that you have 4 hoppers in case you're running 4 of the same type at once. But this is just an example of a sorter. So these are just single speed hopper filters. You can build a storage however you want. And yeah, that's really it. So I did kind of get lucky, in the seed I picked actually had a nice open area around the end platform. So you may have to dig out around it in order to be able to build this. Because once again, you got to make sure you line up that main end platform with this end platform right here. That's it. That's going to be how you can get free concrete in your world too. I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, there will be a world download down the video description. It will be a 118 download, and I did run through this with 118 mechanics. So in 119, we do have the waterlogged leaves block, and in those first 2 versions, you can definitely replace the water there. And even the second version, these waterlogged stairs, you could also replace those with waterlogged leaves. But I know not everyone has updated to 119 yet because they're either waiting for server mods or they wanted to complete some projects in 118 before they switched over. So this world download will be in 118, but this will all work in 119 as well. I'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.